Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today on the show, we start in Michigan's classrooms. The State Board of Education has approved new health and sex ed standards for the first time since 2007.
Adding language about gender identity, emotional well-being, and what it means to have healthy relationships.
We'll dig into why the board made those changes now and what it could mean for teachers, parents, and students.
Then we zoom out to the money question. Michigan schools say they need more funding. The Invest in My Kids proposal would raise taxes on the highest earners. And yesterday, we heard from a supporter. Today, we hear from the business community about the ripple effects they fear.
And in our second hour, we step into Detroit's vibrant arts scene. A celebrated choreographer builds a new world with Eisenhower Dance Detroit.
Then we meet Temate Institute, where Black dance becomes a bridge between culture and community.
Plus, the National Arab Orchestra shares the stories behind its sound, rooted here in Detroit, resonating far beyond it.
The rhythms and reflections that begin here stretch across the world. This is the Metro.
How and what should we teach students about sex and sexual health? What does it mean to have a healthy relationship to others and to our own emotional well-being? These are some of the questions that the Michigan Board of Education tackled last month. That's because the State Board of Education changed its standard guidelines for the first time since 2007. Those changes include explaining and exploring things like gender identity, gender expression, healthy romantic relationships, and understanding one's own emotions. To discuss these changes now and what they might mean for schools and students across the state, I have Tiffany Tilley here. She's the co-vice president for the State Board of Education. Co-vice President Tilley, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And just a note, we will be speaking with one of the two board members who voted against these changes. You'll hear that conversation next week. Now, Co-Vice President Tilley, at the top of the document that explains the new standard guidelines, board members wrote, quote, "The goal of health education is to develop an individual who is health literate." And the changes we're talking about include things like understanding gender expression, right? Gender identity as well, and sexual attraction. So first, what does it look like for a person to be health literate? What should that individual, that student understand, and what kinds of actions should they be taking in their lives?
Let me start with the Michigan Department of Education wrote the standards, the guidelines, the updates. And the board decided to vote to pass the standards, the guidelines. But healthy relationships encompass a lot of things. It's having emotional intelligence. Social emotional learning is really big for me, a big space for me. I love social emotional learning. It's important to have in our classrooms, and it teaches self-management, self-awareness, self-regulation. And with self-regulation, you also have co-regulation, because we're regulating not only ourselves, we're helping each other to regulate. So if your friend is upset, your friend, and it depends on the friend, it depends on their needs, but you can help them calm down. Kind words, it can be running to get them something to drink. It could be a hug. It depends on what their needs are in that moment. But we're constantly regulating ourselves or attempting to, and helping each other to regulate.
And our ability to self-regulate is really what determines so much throughout our lives when it comes to our success with relationships, what happens in our work environments. I'm wondering, you said that social and emotional learning are really important to you. What was the light bulb moment for you with the significance of these things?
I think it's important to change the way we teach. And when I was growing up, you see the grays in my hair, so we won't go into grave details. But
just a few, and they look very nice wrapped up in curls.
Thank you so much. The classrooms were much different. if a child was having a bad day, the teacher didn't care about that. Yeah. It was just sit there and do your homework, sit still and do your homework or schoolwork. And the reality is it makes it harder to do your work and to focus as a child if you are having a hard time regulating, if you don't have that self-awareness, if you don't have that self-management. And there are little prompts that the educators can do, and some of them do use, to help their students. So it could be as simple as using emojis to find out how that student is feeling that day. And if they're having a bad day, and if it is a continuous day, then it's probing. Well, why are you feeling this way? It could be as simple as the student is hungry. There are many students that come to school hungry, and a snack could help get them through the morning and help them to focus. So it could be something more serious, that they're going through trauma in the home, and the educator needs to know that, because they need to be able to understand how they can help them so that they can be successful.
So what you're saying is that the State Board of Education is recognizing that there needs to be a shift in the classroom from this sort of authoritative way of educating children to a more empathetic way. And we've seen this shift already. This has been happening, but now you're able to really codify it with these new standards. Is that right?
Absolutely. So with the health standards now, sex education is a section within the health standards. Yeah. And so with sex education, one of the reasons that we wanted to explain definitions, use the terminology, is, for one, we want to align with the Elliott-Larsen Act, but also we want students to be empathetic towards one another.
What exactly do you want to align with that act, if you wouldn't mind?
So the Elliott-Larsen Act protects this population. And so it says that, and I don't remember the verbiage word for word, but this population is a protected class.
Meaning LGBTQ.
LGBTQ. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that we're aligning with that protection as well. There have been a lot of things that the LGBTQ community has experienced when it comes to harm. And so we want to make sure that we are teaching students to be empathetic towards everyone, towards each other. And so I think it's important. We cannot ignore this population. We've tried, I love the Leave It to Beaver series, and the world just isn't that way anymore, though. Yeah. And so there is so many different types of people and so many different ways of living, and we need to be empathetic to other people, other populations, other cultures, other backgrounds.
So this was the board saying that it's important to understand gender identity and gender expression if we are to be health literate people, if we are to raise health literate kids.
Absolutely.
The standard guidelines around sexual health and sex education hadn't been changed since 2007. So again, this is also an acknowledgement, you're saying, that the world is different from where it was back in 2007 and certainly many, many years prior to that.
We're no longer on dial-up internet. There are so many things. This is just one piece that needed to be changed. This is the most controversial piece. But the fact is, we're living in an age of social media. We're living in an age where cyberbullying exists, AI exists, and we want students to understand all of these things and the healthy norms around all of these things. Marijuana wasn't legalized almost 20 years ago. And so you have students that are 18 and that are able to access it and that are able to bring it into other students and affect the student body. So we want our students to understand all of these things.
That is a perfect example when we think about cannabis legalization, how things are today versus how they were 10 years ago. It's a completely different world. And you and I remember what it was like before that legalization, but a lot of young people don't. And so it sounds too like this is an attempt as well to maybe create more of a world, more of an environment where young people are not feeling like being let's say, part of the LGBTQ community is something that makes you an outsider. This is an attempt to create inclusivity so that
Absolutely.
maybe there's less memory of that time that we both know of.
Absolutely.
So how long did it take to create these new standards? What was that process like? What did you go through to get from point A to point B here?
So the Michigan Department of Education, who we are the governing board for, is who actually went through the process. It took several months, and they received a lot of feedback. They also not only had people at the table, but also collected surveys. So they collected over 1,000 surveys. We've gotten so many emails from people who are for and who are opposed to the new sex standards. And so there was a huge process of getting public comments and making sure that we understand where the public is. And because of the public comments, because some people did have issues, there were some changes and updates that were made, especially to give clarity. Because this is guidance. This isn't curriculum. Everything is still done on a local level.
So to that end, then, could public schools hypothetically completely ignore the new language and not discuss gender identity and sexual orientation in the classroom?
Public schools can absolutely decide not to have sex education at all. It's not mandatory. So this is something that is chosen on the local level. A lot of confusion and misinformation was spread saying that we were taking away parents' rights. That is absolutely untrue. Parents can opt out if their communities decide, if their school districts decide to have sex education. And not only that, by Michigan law, parents have the right to opt out. By Michigan law, the schools must also have a student, or not student, but a sex ed council, advisory council. And so that advisory council has to be made up by community members, and at least 50% of that council has to be parents.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. My guest is Tiffany Tilley. She's the co-vice president for the State Board of Education. We're discussing the new standard guidelines the board released last month. Those guidelines include changes around gender identity, sexual expression, and emotional well-being. Have you heard from any teachers or superintendents who are upset with you about these new changes that you've made? I mean, we're talking a little bit now about the pushback, about the fact that some say this is not a discussion that should be had in schools at all.
No, we've actually gotten a lot of support from educators, from the Parent Teachers Association statewide, school board members. So there are a lot of people that actually support these standards.
Now, again, I'm thinking about the other side here. There are some who are against these new standards and guidelines, who are arguing that they were constructed and implemented by quote unquote liberal parents or those who run liberal nonprofits or organizations, not by more conservative parents. What do you make of that complaint?
I think the world has changed, and some people just don't understand it. We've been called pedophiles. We've been called groomers because we want to make sure that we're giving proper guidance. And let's be clear, some of this has been taught in classrooms across our state for years. My daughter graduated in 2017. This was taught in her school system. LGBTQ community was talked about. Definitely terms were talked about. And we're not influencing anyone to be heterosexual or homosexual. We're not influencing students to have sex at all. We're just making sure that if educators are teaching this, and a lot of them want to, that they know the guidelines. They know the guidelines for the definitions.
I mean, even when you talk about people who pushed back, it was even one of the board members who called you all groomers.
Yes.
How are you navigating this kind of tension within the Board of Education right now? Because it sounds like this decision has created some additional tension.
You definitely have to just keep doing your job. like any professional situation, people have their opinions. People, unfortunately tell lies. They spread lies. Hey, midterms are coming up soon next year. And so people are trying to get their base roused up, and they're doing a good job of that. However, it is breaking down public trust for a lot of people, and that part is extremely unfortunate.
Well, we know public trust is eroding when it comes to many institutions. So you find that the way things have transpired internally on the board and how that has been on view for the public, that has hurt the public's trust in the board?
I think it absolutely has, because there is so much misinformation that is spread, and there are certain populations that are not doing their due diligence. They're going to listen to those voices that are loud on the board and the groups that gather around that.
I want to pivot, if we can, back to emotional health and well-being, as we were talking a little bit about in the beginning, because there was a lot in these new standard guidelines about students understanding their own emotions and being able to understand how their learning and other aspects of their life is impacted by them. And we were talking a little bit about self-regulation and how important that is. What does it look like to have really good emotional skills, do you think?
I think it's being aware and having tools. So, and it's going to be different for everyone. And there are a lot of people, especially in urban areas. We don't talk enough about urban PTSD. There are a lot of people that have experienced trauma, period, though. And so you have to be able to process whatever it is that you're feeling, you're thinking. You have to have the tools, the techniques to manage those things. It could be something as simple as taking some time to do some deep breathing to help regulate your system.
I recently saw this clip on social media. Oh my gosh, it kind of brought a few tears to my eyes. It was a teacher who, at the beginning of every class, as the kid is walking in, they get to choose what they want, what kind of greeting they want. Do you want a hug? Do you want me to say namaste? Do you want to dance? Do you want to, I'm trying to think of what some of the other options were, but to see how that set the tone for kids and how it made them feel seen in that moment, it reminds me of some of what we're talking about today, when teachers really, you're pushing them and encouraging them to acknowledge the full child here.
Yes. And my children, when they were younger, they attended Inseroma Institute, and it was an African-centered learning school. And they started each day out with meditation.
Wow.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference in how the student population behaved. They were way more in tune with their feelings. And my children, especially my daughter, are so emotionally intelligent. And I do believe a lot of that, in addition to the things that I teach them, a lot of that was from going to a school where they were able to meditate every day at a young age. And it was before I started meditating. So
before mom started meditating. I mean, undoubtedly, you think about the ways that meditation changes the brain, how it makes you so much more mindful of your surroundings.
Yes.
If you can start that at a young age,
yes,
that has some real power. Before we go, I do want to talk about one thing in regards to these standards from the sexual standpoint, because this is something that we know is playing a big role in kids' lives right now. I noticed that there's no mention of pornography in the standard guidelines. And that worries some, because pornography is where a lot of students, particularly boys, learn about sex. And we know that it's everywhere. It's very accessible and it's addictive. Do you think schools should be teaching about the problems with pornography, that it often, let's say, objectifies women, that it doesn't really reflect reality?
I think that's a good point. I have not really thought about the pornography piece, but if you think about the way that movies have changed from when we were growing up, it's close to being pornography. There are so many, it's everywhere. Sex is everywhere now. It's all over the internet. It's all over social media. So I think that some of that will be covered just because of the nature of sex being portrayed in so many things and so public now. I think that it will depend as well on the district and how far they want to dive into the sex education. We don't choose the curriculum.
Right. So in other words, teachers and school administrators have the latitude to take things in this direction if they would like to. I guess, one other thing on the other side of the coin here is that some would say that sex education should be required. What do you say to that?
I still believe in parent choice. I believe that parent choice is important. I like to think that we don't teach values to some degree. Values are taught, but the values really should be taught in the home. And it should be up to parents to decide if they want their child or if their child is ready for that education. But I do believe that it is important to have in school, and it is valuable. It's very valuable. I think it would be irresponsible if we were not offering sex education for students and parents that want it and need it.
What if parents are not doing this in the home?
And some may not be. But we still have freedom here in this country. We have freedom of choice. And I think it's irresponsible for parents not to ever teach or expose their children to sex and make sure that they're well informed and prepared, because there are a lot of harms that could happen if they are not prepared. And so it's important for not only for them to learn it in school, but it's important for them to learn it at home too.
Tiffany Tilley is the co-vice president for the State Board of Education. Thank you so much for joining me on the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, Michigan's schools need help, but how we pay for that help is sparking a statewide debate. The Invest in My Kids proposal would raise taxes on the highest earners. Yesterday, we heard from an educational advocate campaigning for the proposal. Today, we hear from an opponent representing the business community. That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.